Can a French person understand a Quebec French speaker from Canada? Apparently not, according to the many comments on my last video. I'm French, I live in Paris, and today I want to react to a few videos of people speaking Quebec French and see how much of it I can actually understand. So if you've never heard Quebec French before, it is pretty different from the French spoken in France. And you need to know that French is the only official language of Quebec in Canada, and it's because back in the 17th century, Canada was a French colony until it was lost to Britain in 1763. French speakers there became surrounded with English speakers, but they held on tightly to their culture and their language, which evolved totally separately from the French from France. And as a French person, one of the questions I had when researching this video is, how is Quebec keeping their language alive when there are so many English speakers around them? And to understand that, let's watch our first video.
Tous les jeunes adultes que nous interpellons ici à Montréal intègrent l'anglais dans leur vie courante.
Moi, j'écoute toutes mes séries en anglais. Même dans ma tête, quand je parle avec quelqu'un, je vais penser en anglais.
First of all, I want to say that I understand everyone very well. Like, there's over 8 million people in the province of Quebec, so it's one of the most well-known ways of speaking French. Everyone who just spoke here has a very understandable accent to me as a French person, even though you'll see there's quite a few differences.
Selon un rapport de l'Office québécois de la langue française, le tiers des Québécois de 18 à 34 ans préfèrent travailler dans un environnement bilingue. À peine 58% travaillent essentiellement en français, en diminution constante depuis 2010.
Faut pas qu'on perde le français non plus, c'est sûr, mais les deux langues, ça me dérange pas du tout.
So that's really interesting to me that, especially in Montreal, more and more people have to speak English at work. And I have found in my research that there's a lot of talk on how to keep the French language alive. And, you know, I also relate to what this girl said, because it's not about refusing English, but it's more about keeping your culture, your language, and your identity.
À Montréal, où les francophones représentent 66% de la population, alors que la proportion se situe à 94% ailleurs en province.
It feels like there's a big gap between Montreal and the rest of the province. Like 66% versus 84% is quite a big gap. And since we're on the topic of the rest of Quebec, let's now make it harder for me and let's try to understand a Quebec accent of someone who's not from Montreal.
C'est dame nature. On peut bien dire qu'il y a du homard, on le sait pas. Personne ne va parler avec un homard. So,
Alright, this is very hard for me. I get the context. You know, he's a fisherman out of the beautiful Île de la Madeleine, but I don't understand too much, so let's put subtitles on.
c'est pas comme une baleine au cou, ils vont mettre un GPS, mais un homard, là, c'est très dur à suivre. Puis il y a bien des biologistes qui te comptent n'importe quoi, mais il n'y en a pas un des autres qui a parlé avec un homard. Quand quelqu'un parle avec un homard, là, il va trouver la recette magique.
It is tough, but I feel if I trained my ears, I would 100% understand him. And I don't know about you, but I feel his accent reminds me of the Cajun French speakers from Louisiana, which I already made a video about. And it's so interesting to me to see how many different accents there are. And just know as well that there's so many different French speakers in Canada. Today we're gonna focus on Quebec French, but if you like this video, I might make more. Also, I just feel I need to share this, that every person from Quebec that I've met told me that French people from France often found their accent funny, which seriously makes me feel a bit sad and disappointed, because Quebec French and other French accents are 100% valid ways of speaking French to me. And also I want to add that it's not just these people. Some French people love making fun of accents. Like, I personally remember when I moved to Paris from the south of France all these years ago, there were a few Parisians who made fun of me for having a southern accent. Like, I remember I couldn't say a word without having those people laughing at me, and I think even 15 years ago I'm still a bit salty about it. I just wish people would approach differences with a bit more curiosity, because it just makes life way more interesting. Alright, one thing I did know about Quebec is that they have so many expressions that are different than the ones we would use in France. So let's check them out.
Au Québec, on dit pas se balader, on dit prendre une marche.
In France, this would mean like you fell.
Au Québec, on dit pas ouh, il fait froid, on dit il fait frette ou on gèle. Au Québec, on fait pas du shopping, on magasine. Au Québec, on dit pas bonjour en se levant, on dit bon matin.
Yeah, I knew this one as well. There's a few that kind of mean something different in France, but I think I would understand in context. Also, I love magasiner, because in French, we would use a mixture of French and English. Like, we would say faire du shopping with a French accent. And unlike Quebec, in France, we're really famous for our very weird use of English. Like, instead of translating movie titles, we give them a weird English title, and then we say it with a big French accent. Like, in France, this movie is not The Hangover, it's Very Bad Trip. But in Quebec, it's lendemain de veille, which sounds so much nicer in my opinion. And Quebec seems to translate so many more things into French, which in my personal opinion is really nice because I cannot stand the bad Franglish in France anymore, especially in ads. Like, seriously, they can be ridiculous sometimes. In any case, I really love all these differences. If you're going to travel abroad soon, you need to hear about today's sponsor, Airlo. With Airlo, you can buy affordable data plans around the world through eSIMs in over 200 countries and regions. I've been using them for over 2 years, and they are my favorite travel hack to have data on my phone when I land. I recently had to go to the Philippines for a wedding, and I installed my eSIM on my phone before getting on the plane, and when I landed, I just had to activate it to have data on my phone, didn't have to worry about finding a Wi-Fi connection or looking for a physical SIM card. One thing I really like about Airlo is that they have so many different locations available, so it really adds peace of mind for me. Like, I know I have one less thing to worry about when I'm traveling. You can even use my code Lucille3 to get $3 off your first eSIM. They also have regional plans as well. You can buy their Europe eSIM and get data in 42 countries for the duration of your trip. If you want to try it, you can download the Airlo app using the link in the description or scan the QR code and use my code Lucille3. So one thing I knew about Quebec is that they really go the extra mile to promote the French language, and sometimes it's done in ways not everyone agrees with, and we will not really get into that today because this is supposed to be a fun and light discovery of the language and the culture. But one way I really found interesting though is the French classes that are offered to new immigrants who don't yet speak French. And here I found this amazing documentary that follows a group of people from all over the world who just arrived recently in Quebec and are trying to learn French in 6 months, which can help them with job opportunities or getting permanent residency.
À quoi on s'attend de ces étudiants-là?
OK, alors les étudiants qui finissent le cours 2 vont être capables de raconter des expériences personnelles, sont évidemment capables d'aller au restaurant, magasiner, s'informer avec un propriétaire.
Okay, so what I love about this class is that it's very concrete. Like, it's not just grammar and vocab, it's all the situations you would encounter in your daily life if you had just moved to a country. So like going to the restaurant, finding an apartment, finding work. And that's so important because moving to a new place when you don't speak the language can be very intimidating.
Je trouve que le plus grand obstacle, c'est d'accepter comme adulte de faire des erreurs, de ne pas produire des phrases aussi claires que ce qu'on a dans la tête.
This teacher seems awesome. I don't want to spoil the ending of the documentary, but he's doing such a good job at preparing them for everyday situations, which is truly what you need if you're learning French in 6 months instead of focusing on trying to be perfect. And I found that so interesting that there's different programs to help people learn the language when they come to Quebec. And they also have official programs for people who already are French speakers. Like in France, there's often some official meetings that are organized by Quebec to promote French immigration to Quebec. And I know that there's a lot of young French people who want to come to Quebec, Montreal in particular, because they make it so easy for French people to come and go there, with even having a specific type of visa, which makes it easier for French speakers to come to Quebec. I personally know a lot of French people who have spent at least 6 months in Quebec, either for work, for an internship, for their studies, and it's often seen by French people as an easier way to discover a new culture since we speak the same language, but it's not always easy, as we're gonna see in this next video, which is a French documentary about French people who are coming to Quebec in search of good job opportunities. And here we're following this guy who is applying to different positions in cafés and receives feedback on cultural differences and how to find work.
Aucun poste dans l'immédiat, mais la gérante prend le temps de conseiller Gaëtan sur son CV, pas tout à fait adapté aux exigences locales.
Tu vois, même dans tes loisirs, t'as même pas écrit jeu de société.
Ouais.
Ah ouais, puis essaye de pas utiliser des termes anglo-français. Commercial, c'est pas un mot ici. Ça existe pas, ça veut rien dire.
Okay, so this is so interesting that he's receiving that as a feedback because there are so many English words at work in French. Like we said meeting, email, customer success, sales, all of these words, we say them with a French accent. All right, let's keep going.
Ouais, en France, c'est vraiment by the book, là, vraiment très propre, tout ça. Les gens, ils mettent leurs photos sur leur CV, ils sont vraiment très carrés. Nous, on va regarder déjà l'énergie des gens qui est importante. Puis après, ouais, l'expérience, t'as pas mieux que ça. Tu sais, t'es allé à l'école 5 ans en photographie, ça veut pas dire que tu fais de la photo.
It seems to be quite a big cultural difference. It's true that in France, as a society, we're still very formal. We value education a lot. And here it seems clear that, at least for this guy, there seems to be a difference in culture. And even if you speak the same language, you still need to adapt. It's not because you can understand what someone says that you don't need to make an effort to adapt to their culture when you're coming to their country. All right, now let's see it from a Quebec perspective and watch this video by a French creator that I love who went around and asked people from Quebec what they thought of French people.
Bon, les Parisiens, là, on le sait que c'est pas les plus accueillants, c'est pas les plus chaleureux. C'est une relation un peu compliquée. On a de la difficulté à se comprendre. On a bien beau parler la même langue, on s'exprime pas toujours de la même façon. Français en général, on vous apprécie, on est content de vous voir. Les Parisiens, hey, peut-être que je connais pas les bonnes personnes.
Très lucide sur la réalité, très politique, très critique.
This is so true. French people love to complain and critique stuff. That's not a thing I like.
Elles sont un peu désagréables, parfois un peu snobs.
La vie est généralement positive. Sauf que des fois, on trouve que vous énervez un peu facilement.
Also true. I feel personally attacked by that.
On les aime beaucoup. Vous êtes nos cousins.
Yeah, that's also a thing. French people, I don't know if that's the case. If you're from Quebec, let me know. Do you say we're cousins as well? We always say that Quebec people are cousins. We say nos cousins québécois. So let me know if you're from Quebec. Are we cousins? But I do feel this way.
On vous sait quand même très sophistiqué. On aime beaucoup votre cuisine. Vous êtes quand même très accueillant, sauf des fois à Paris.
Ils rigolent beaucoup de notre accent, qu'on n'a pas d'ailleurs. Non, ce sont des gens sympathiques, qui sont très curieux et qui ont souvent une très grande estime d'eux-mêmes.
Loved those rapid fire questions. They were so funny. And, you know, I think it's the perfect way to end that video. It was so fun to discover the language and the culture of Quebec. And now I just need to travel there.